On a fog-smeared morning in St. Mercy Parish, Louisiana, two black fishermen drag a rusted lockbox from the bayou. Inside are Polaroids of black children marked missing in the 1970s, smiling, posed, numbered like inventory. The sheriff orders it sealed and forgotten. A new deputy refuses. Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. Elijah Baptiste, a young black deputy sheriff fresh from New Orleans, steps into a parish where church bells ring over secrets and the law serves whoever has a key to the room. When the lockbox surfaces, Eli disobeys orders to dig into the cold disappearance of multiple black children ignored half a century ago. His search knots into the church, the mayor's office, and his own department. As he follows a trail of red string and closed mouths, he uncovers a pattern: benevolence funds, a shuttered clinic, and a choir that never sang again. The deeper he goes, the more the bayou answers back whispering names that were meant to sink. Morning broke in a wash of pewter light. The bayou steamed like a breath held too long, the water dark as brewed coffee. Crawlers and egrets picked along the reeds while the outboard sputtered and coughed, and then settled into a steady purr. Joseph Guidry and his nephew Malik stood at the skiff's stern, pulling on a net that fought them like a snagged alligator. "Unc," Malik said, braced and grimacing, "that ain't no gator." Joe spat into the water, a thin ribbon of tobacco-stained saliva dissolving as quick as it hit. "Don't say ain't, and don't lean." Something heavy came up slow, like the bayou was deciding whether to let go. It surfaced with a yawning slurp, green with algae and wrapped in a skeleton of vines. A corner caught sunlight, and for a second Malik thought it was a treasure chest, something from his games, gold coins and curses. It was a box, iron, thick and ugly, eaten by time. Two clamps, each stamped by a maker's mark worn down to a crescent, sealed the lid. A little bit of chain hung off, snapped clean as a tooth. Joe reached for the gaff and hauled. The skiff swayed. "Help me, boy." They got it over, and the thing hit the slats with a thunk that made both flinch. The smell coming off, it wasn't rot. It was old metal and damp paper and something medicinal, like a clinic hallway after everyone's gone home. "What you think's in there?" Malik's eyes were huge. "Not for us." Joe crossed himself, thumb sweeping slow over his brow. "We call the law." "Sheriff LeBleu?" Joe looked at the fog, at the line of cypress that held their breath like witnesses. He didn't answer. He thumbed his phone awake and called the number he'd stored 2 months back after a church fish fry, the one the new deputy had pressed on him with a grip that said he knew how folks looked at badges around here. "Deputy Elijah Baptiste," the screen read. Joe hit call. By the time I rolled up, the fog had thinned to a lace shawl across the water. The parish swallowed sound in the way country places do, softening everything until it felt like moving through a dream nobody asked to have. I introduced myself to Joe Guidry and his nephew, and saw the almost hidden relief in their eyes when I said, "Call me Eli." The sheriff's name wasn't on their tongues, and that told me enough. Joe jerked his chin at the box. We found it snagged. Malik hovered, holding his breath like it might explode. I crouched. The box was cold even in the humidity. The maker's crescent was odd. I'd never seen that stamp before. The clamps had been tempered. Whoever locked this up didn't want it to be opened by the usual kind of rust. "Give me a hand," I said. We got it into the bed of my unit, a white Parish truck where the AC grumbled and the Dash Jesus bobbled in every pothole. I snapped photos, logged the find on my body cam, and radioed in, leaving out names for now. "Found sealed container. Probable evidence. Bayou Mercy at milepost 17, I said. "Bringing it to evidence." Copy. Dispatch came back. Laverne's voice, half sweet tea and half static. Sheriff's on the way. Of course he was. By the time I pushed through the glass door of the Parish station, Sheriff Cormac LeBleu was there already, hat on, jaw working like he was chewing a thought. In the lobby, the old, faded lithograph of the courthouse looked judgy. LeBleu gave me a second to close the door before he started. "What's this about a box?" he asked. Fishermen found it, sealed tight. Chains snapped. Might be nothing. Might not. He tugged at a cuff. The man had a way of always looking dressed for a photo, the kind that ends up on a wall with a brass plaque. Probably old tools. See this kind of mess after storms. Folks dump what they shouldn't. Storms can't stamp steel, I said. There's a maker's mark. Crescent. Never seen it. I have, he said. Belonged to a storage company down on Route 4 that shut when I was a boy. Let's not spook half the parish with ghost stories. Put it in evidence. We'll crack it after lunch. Chain of custody says sooner's better, I said. And I'd like Dr. Gaines present. His eyes flicked. A dog catching an unfamiliar scent. You bringing the coroner for a box? Call it a hunch. Hunches are for racetrack boys, Baptiste. He smiled, a tight pulling at his cheeks. But call her. After lunch. He turned, boots ringing on tile, and I knew two things. One, he did not want that box opened. Two, we were going to open it anyway. In the evidence room, the fan was busted again. The heat hung like a wet quilt. On the table, the lockbox sat like a thing the room didn't want to touch. I snapped photos, took measurements. I could feel it in my bones. The way some objects carry weight, it isn't just mass. My mother calls that weight witness. I called Dr. Myra Gaines and told her what we had. She was at her clinic, finishing paperwork on a county overdose case, but she heard the tone in my voice and said she'd be there in 20. She came in carrying a cup of iced coffee sweating rings and a case I had last seen on a TV show where someone says, "This might sting." Tall, skin the color of sun-warmed pecans, eyes that saw you without making a show of it. She regarded the box and set her coffee down on the far edge of the table. "You couldn't wait for me to get here to take the fun out of my afternoon," she said. "Sheriff wants to wait until after lunch," I said. She looked at the clock. "It's 10:15. "Some lunches take time," I said. She clicked her tongue. "You got a pry bar?" "We had better than that." The parish had an old Halligan tool, black and scarred, and I thought about all the doors in our history that had to be forced open, and how this felt like one of those days. "Photograph everything?" Myra said. "And Baptiste?" "Yeah. Whatever's inside, it's going to stick." We cracked the clamps with rubber mallets and patience. It was less dramatic than a movie. It was grunts and sweat and a long whine of metal that set my teeth on edge. The lid lifted with the sound of separation. Inside, it was packed tight. Plastic sleeves, the kind you'd use for photographs, stacked and sealed with masking tape, so old it had turned the color of nicotine. An envelope on top, Mercy Fund, 1976 to 1979, scrawled in a hand that wanted to look official and didn't. I reached for gloves. So did Myra. We lifted the first sleeve. Polaroids, white borders yellowing, corners rounded off. Children, black, ranging from maybe 5 to 12. Each posed against a school hallway or a church wall. A hand-lettered sign held up with their name and a date. The names crawled across my brain like ants. Tyrone, LaShonda, Ozzie, Brenda. The dates floated and then sank. Each photograph had a second notation in red grease pencil, a number, and the word placed. Some had home in quotations. Myra's jaw tightened. Where'd this come from? Bayou, I said. Skiff, that section behind Kingfisher Bend. She took a breath through her nose. Do you smell that? Paper, Old tape. Before that, that faint antiseptic. I did. Beneath the bayou odor was something clean and empty. Hospitals always made me think of winter. Yeah. She picked up the envelope. Inside was a ledger page, the kind torn from a book with green lines. Mercy Benevolence Fund. Columns. Date, donor, purpose, receipt. In the purpose column, it said things like clothing, summer choir, transportation, medical. The amounts weren't big. But the donors, some of those names were carved into plaques at the courthouse, the church, the only decent ball field in the parish. Beneath the ledger were two more envelopes. One held a brass key with a stamped number, 118B, and the same crescent mark. The other held waxy slips with names and telephone numbers I knew were out of service just by looking at them. Lord, Myra said, not as prayer, as diagnosis. That's when the door hissed open. Sheriff LeBleu filled the doorway, hat low, face a pale wedge. Deputies Bayard and Connolly shadowed him, both white, both built like men who ate community barbecue for sport. The sheriff's gaze slid from the open box to our hands. He did not speak for 3 long seconds. I said after lunch, he said. We're well before dinner, I said. Bayard laughed until he saw the photos. The sound died in his throat. Connolly looked hard at the ceiling tiles, as if counting them. LeBleu stepped closer, the leather of his duty belt creaking. He didn't touch the table. Photographs, he said. Looks like charity work, old church drives. Kids, I said. Black kids, with dates. And a word, placed. Some of these names match missing person reports from the 70s. I can pull them. The 70s, he said, like it was a recipe gone stale. That's decades gone. We tread careful. This parish doesn't need grief dredged up for glory. That box dredged itself, I said. And grief doesn't rot. It waits. He smiled down at me with the warmth of a reptile. Poetry's for Thursday nights, Baptiste. Seal it. I'll call the state. They can take it up the line. Chain of custody says we start a log. Notify state. Sure. But we also keep working. Quietly. I nodded at the ledger. I'd like to go to the church. You can go to church on Sunday like everyone else, he said. You'll log this, then you'll take your lunch. Then you'll work traffic on Route 11, because the state boys are coming. And I'll be good and damned if Mercy Parish looks messy when they come sniffing. Myra watched him with the kind of stillness that made men fidget. She's the only coroner I know who can silence a room by being present. Sheriff, she said, these photos are of children. If there were adoptions or placements happening outside state channels, that's criminal. If these children, her voice tripped over the word, we might have remains in the bayou. You don't want the state writing your story for you. LeBleu pulled his hat brim lower, then raised it as if reconsidering his angle. Doctor, I appreciate your counsel. We'll do it right, which means slow. He looked at me. Baptiste, turn over your notes. I'll take it from here. I did not blink. No. You could hear Bayard's guns pop as he suctioned surprise back in. What was that? The sheriff asked softly. No, I said. I'll log my notes. I'll log the box. I'll notify the Louisiana State Police myself and get a case number. But I am not stepping off an investigation that landed on my desk. This is my parish, too. Silence. Then he smiled. It was a show of teeth more than anything else. Your parish, he said. I like that. He turned and left, snapping his fingers at Bayard, who jolted like a dog awake. You with me. Connolly, babysit. Don't let our poet get distracted. The door closed. Connolly exhaled, shoulders falling. Myra glanced at me and the photos. You sure you want to spend your currency this way, Eli? What else am I supposed to spend it on? I said. She nodded once. Then do your job. I logged everything and made my call to Baton Rouge. leaving my voice calm enough that even the recording would read me as a reasonable man. A trooper named Andrea Ruiz called back within the hour, brisk and clear. "We'll send the detective down," she said. "But first, catalog those photos against anything in file. I'll push a request to your records." "Copy," I said. "And Detective Ruiz, please come with an appetite. Sheriff's cooking is petty." She laughed. "I bring my own." Records smelled like old toner and dust baked by a vent. Laverne, dispatch and records queen depending on the hour, had a stack waiting. She's the kind of woman who knows where every secret is filed and what it'll cost you to pull it. She wore her readers low and her hair wrapped tight, and when I held up a Polaroid and a report, her mouth flattened. "Lord have mercy," she said. "Little Ozzie Rickman. I remember his mama on the phone for hours until the line got hot. They told her he ran off to Baton Rouge with cousins." "Did he have cousins in Baton Rouge?" "Everybody got cousins in Baton Rouge," she said. "That's the trick." She flicked a look toward the hallway. "You be careful." "I am," I said. "No," she said. "Be careful for real." We matched 9 names to 9 reports before noon. There were 3 more kids with matching first names, but not enough on the last to say for sure. The dates jerked me like a leash. This wasn't one summer gone wrong. This was a pattern, years wide. Each report had the same flattening language. Suspected runaway, possible family placement, mother uncooperative, and many were closed without a single formal interview. I walked out into the hallway and stared at the coffee machine until it hissed itself to sleep. The corridor smelled like scuffed tile and the lemon cleaner the janitor used. A church bulletin leaned on the table near the machine. Street, Mercy Baptist Home Day, with kids grinning under a crooked banner. The pastor, Reverend Isaiah Runnels, stood behind them with a smile that reached his eyes. I knew Runnels. He did good work food pantry, after-school tutoring. He'd prayed for my mother when her blood pressure went wild last year, and he doesn't ask for money unless he plans to give it away. Beneath the bulletin, a faded flyer. Summer Choir 1978 Neighborhood Night. The choir director's name had been torn, the paper thin as onion skin. Someone had scribbled "Mercy Makes Room" at the bottom in blue pen. I drove to the church. St. Mercy Baptist sits on a little rise, as if the land itself wants to keep her dress hem dry. White clapboard, a steeple that had leaned since Reconstruction. Kids chased each other around the magnolia tree out front, making the air sweet and nervous. When I stepped out, a boy stopped, the ball he carried jammed against his stomach. "You here for the pantry?" he asked, eyes sliding to my badge. "Here for the pastor," I said. "You seen him?" He pointed toward the fellowship hall. "He in there with Miss Tasha, cutting onions. He be crying in a minute." I found Reverend Runnels in an apron that said "Blessed" in weary letters. He was indeed cutting onions, tears glazing his cheeks. "Officer Baptiste," he said when he saw me, and he opened his arms for a hug without a second thought. I let myself be held like a son and felt something old steady in my chest. "Rev," I said into his shoulder. He pulled back, studying me with eyes that had buried more parishioners than he'd baptized. "You look like your daddy when he was a rookie," he said. "Like a man who thinks the train is coming but can't see it yet." I looked at the counter. "You ever heard of the Mercy Benevolence Fund?" He put the knife down. The kitchen noise, the hum of the soda machine, the rattle of a fan seemed to step back so we could hear the space between sounds. "That's a name I haven't heard in a long time," he said finally. "Why are you asking me that? Better yet, why now?" "We pulled a box from the bayou," I said. "Photos of children. Ledger pages. 70s. Your church shows up on paper." He breathed out slow through his nose and nodded as if something he'd feared had finally arrived dressed for dinner. "Benevolence is a good word that can be made into a weapon," he said. "Back then, I was barely a teenager. My predecessor, Pastor Orleans, managed that fund with the mayor and the ladies' auxiliary. Food, clothing, bus gas for trips. But people whisper about what they don't understand, and sometimes they whisper right. What did they whisper? I asked. That some children got placed in good homes across the river. That some mothers were helped to make hard decisions. That some fathers were paid to look away. He didn't look at me when he said that last part, and I felt a throb of heat behind my eyes. Do you know where the records are? I imagine they weathered away like everything else here we are ashamed of, he said. Pastor Orleans died in '89. Stroke. His widow moved to Lafayette and then to glory. The choir director, Miss Lewin Pike, left town after a scandal that nobody agreed on. Some say she stole from the kitchen. Some say she stole children. He winced at his own words. Our town loves to speak in half-truths. We say more by not saying. May I have a look around? Offices, attic, wherever old things go to pretend they're safe. It's your church, too, he said. Just don't track onion skins into the sanctuary. Miss Tasha will put you on the prayer list and the mop. Behind the sanctuary, the hallway smelled like hymnals and dust. The office was neat, files tight as a choir, but the attic access was the real memory palace. I pulled down the ladder and climbed into heat, so thick my shirt glued to my back. Boxes sagged, their tape giving up battles fought in the dark. A hornet nest slept like a fist in the corner. I eased around it, talking soft to something that hadn't asked to be bothered. I found a chest labeled choir misc and almost laughed at how God arranges jokes. Inside, sheet music, a conductor's baton, photographs of teenagers with afros and treasure chest grins, and a folder marked participation forms. I slid it open. Parents' signatures. Emergency contacts, back when you listed the neighbor who'd whip your child if needed. On the back of each, a stamp in purple. Mercy Benevolence approved. In the corner, someone had penciled numbers that didn't match attendance. They matched the red grease pencil from the Polaroids. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number, local prefix. I answered. A voice that had been smoked down to gravel said, "You got your hands in something big, son." "Who is this?" "Call me a man who remembers when the choir stopped singing," the voice said. "You think a box just floats up? Bayou don't live secrets on its own. Somebody loosened that chain. Somebody like me. You want to meet? I want you to listen. Mercy takes its own. Always has. It's in the water and in the walls. You can find the rest if you find the clinic." "What clinic?" He hung up. I came down into the stairwell light, blinking like a man pulled from a theater matinee. Reverend Runnels leaned on the doorjamb, a paper towel wadded in his fist. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said. "Clinic," I said. He closed his eyes. We had a satellite-free clinic off Parish Road 9 in the 70s, run by a Dr. Whitlock and a circle of women who did blood pressure and baby checks. The building shut after a flood caved in the back wall. The county says they hold records to storage. Nobody saw a truck. Where is it? Back of Bayou Mercy, where the dirt road turns mean. You won't get there without a truck taller than your pride. "I got one issued," I said. "Take mine," he said, "and take someone with you. The road remembers who's walked it. I'll take Dr. Gaines, and maybe a journalist," I added, watching his face. He smiled slow. "I know you thinking about Naomi Dell. She called me last night for a quote about the pantry, and I told her we don't give quotes for hunger. We give food, but she good people. She doesn't run from ghosts. Just make sure the sheriff don't see y'all together, or he'll baptize you in motor oil." "I'll be church quiet," I said. On my way back to my unit, I caught sight of a man leaning near the cemetery fence, smoke hallowing his head. Pale, thin as a fence post, hair wet-combed into a part that hadn't moved since high school. He watched me like a man measuring a fence he planned to hop. "You lost?" I asked. He smiled around his cigarette. "No, Deputy, I'm right where I mean to be. Welcome to Mercy." "Been here 2 months," I said. "Feels longer." "Time treads water," he said. "You keep your head above it." He flicked ash and turned to go, flipping his collar against the heat like he was cold. His back gave me an ache I couldn't name. By the time I got to the clinic site, the sky had gathered itself into thunder. Dr. Gaines followed in her Subaru, tires biting the mud. Naomi Dell, the journalist I'd met on a school safety piece in New Orleans years, back pulled up last in a silver Camry that had seen miles like a pastor sees confessions. Naomi stepped out, braids pulled into a knot, recorder in one hand. She cocked her head at me. "You didn't tell me it was going to be a stroll in the swamp." "I said boots," I said. "You said maybe boots," she said. And I heard definitely boots. She looked at the building beyond the cattails. That the place? It had once been a rectangle of hope. Now it leaned, windows punched out, a door off its hinges like a mouth missing a tooth. Kudzu took liberties with the porch. The sign had weathered to a ghost. Mercy Health Outpost, the letters ragged as Eton lace. Around back, the earth had caved where the flood chewed it free. We stepped inside. The light went green, filtered through vines. The air was a stew of damp sheetrock and old antiseptic. Cabinets hung open, drawers yawned, a metal stool lay on its side like a deer mid-fall. "Watch your step," Myra said. "Old floors have tricks." Naomi clicked her recorder off. "I'm just watching your face," she said to me. "You look like your bones know something." "My bones know ghosts way more than they should," I said. We moved slow, lifting papers that turned to pulp in our hands. The exam room had a poster of a smiling baby with cheeks like biscuits, a caption about immunizations. I took a picture because the light through the torn poster made the baby look like it had a second mouth saying help. In the back, a locked cabinet flared at me. Brass, crescent mark on the keyhole. I pulled the key from the envelope in my pocket. 118B. "Either the universe likes jokes," Naomi said, "or somebody wrote this script." The key fit. It turned with the satisfaction of an old man cracking his back. Inside, records wrapped in plastic, zippered and sealed like blankets against rain. We pulled one, then another. Names, ages, height and weight, parents, notes in a tidy hand. No father at home, mother overwhelmed, CPS case pending. Another page with words that knocked breath out of me, placement referral private. Below it, destinations. "Some of these might be legitimate adoptions," Myra said carefully. "But this looks like a pipeline with no oversight." Naomi leaned against the wall and exhaled. "You think the sheriff knows all this?" "He knows something," I said. "Whether he knows this is a different question." Lightning snagged the tree line. The building shuddered when thunder spoke. Rain came, heavy and hard, slamming the roof like applause you did not earn. "We should go," Myra said. "This place isn't safe." I slid one folder into my satchel and snapped photos of the rest, because a man is only trusted by what he can carry. On the way out, the doorframe caught my shirt and held like a hand that wanted to keep me. Back at my unit, Naomi put a microphone in my direction and then put it down again. "I'm not here to blow this open before you do your job," she said. "I'm here because I know how this story ends if it's told by men who never had to look for their own kids in a system that presumes they lost them." "You trust me?" I asked. "I trust your mother," she said, and I had to smile because that was fair. We drove back slow. The Parish turned slick. I checked my mirrors because I'm a man who trusts what he can see and what he can feel, and I felt eyes. A truck tailed 3 car lengths back. Old Ford, brown, one headlight fogged. It kept distance like it knew the law. At the next intersection, it turned and vanished behind a cane field. At the office, The evidence room light was off when it should have been on. Connolly stood at the door with his hands on his hips, his face whiter than the daisy chain of fluorescence humming overhead. "What happened?" I asked. He swallowed. "Breaker tripped," he said. "Flickered and came back." "Anybody in there?" "Just me. And then Bayard came and told me to go get him a sandwich, and when I came back he was gone. And what?" "The box was moved," he said. "A little." Mira went past us and ran her gloved fingers along the table. Dust smudges trailed on her gloves like fingerprints in reverse. "Either the box walked," she said, "or someone did." I lifted the lid. The photos were as we'd left them, except for one gap. Brenda's photo, the girl in the yellow dress with the missing front tooth, was gone. I closed my eyes for a second too long. When I opened them, LeBleu was in the doorway again, rain on his hat brim, smile fixed and feral. "State troopers will be here in the morning," he said. "Till then, we hold. The Brenda photo is gone," I said. "You want to do a search of everyone who had access, Sheriff?" He slid his tongue over his teeth as if savoring something. "That would include you," he said. "Search me," I said, and held my arms out like a man welcoming a fight he didn't want. He didn't move. "Tomorrow," he said, "after we've all slept." "You look tired, Baptiste." "Fatigue makes men see patterns in the wood grain." "I see patterns because they're there," I said. He shrugged, the motion elegant as a dancer's shoulder. "Then sleep. See if they're there in the morning." He left me with the box and the hum of the lights and a hole exactly the size of a little girl's picture. That night, thunder rolled like a bowling alley. God had opened for business. I sat on my mother's front porch after supper and watched rain thread between the railings. She cradled a mug of tea and studied me with those eyes that have surprised doctors and pastors in equal measure. The Saints game murmured low in the living room behind us, a summer rerun to keep the house company. "You gone quiet," she said. "Trying to make the puzzle fit," I said. "Puzzles fit when they want to. You forcing it will break the teeth." She sipped. "You know what I think when it storms like this?" "You think of your boys," I said, smiling crooked past a memory. "You think of Daddy banging on that window in '05 to tell us water was coming fast." "I think of how storms make folks tell the truth," she said. "We fools. We keep secrets like they're seeds that won't sprout. Then the rain come and we find out what we planted." We sat a while with that. I told her about the box and the clinic and the missing photo. She listened like always, her fingers tapping her mug's handle like Morse. When I finished, she set the mug down. "You know your cousin June lost a baby in '77, she said. They told her SIDS. She never believed it. Said she woke up one morning and somebody had changed her child's smell." "What?" I sat up so fast the chair bit my thigh. She knew what her child smelled like. She said this baby they handed back to her was a stranger. They told her grief makes you crazy. She got on a bus to Houston a week later. Called me once from a payphone and said, "Mercy takes its own." I told her I didn't know what that meant. She hung up. Mama looked at the rain. She ain't called since. "Why didn't you?" Who was I gonna tell? She said, soft but sharp, "Your daddy was 2 months into the badge, and he kept his head down in a world that wanted it bowed. We couldn't pick a fight with a church, a clinic, and a sheriff all at once. We had 2 boys and a mortgage, and one of those boys liked trouble." She didn't have to say my brother's name. The wall behind us held his photo anyway, the high school grin and the cap tilted too far back, the eyes that told jokes even when he wasn't talking. Reggie, Angola for possession and a parole violation, then home again with a limp he didn't have before. Reggie who slept now in a room that smelled like wintergreen and muscle rub, who woke from dreams with his hands fisted. "I'll talk to June," I said. "You won't find her," Mama said, "unless she wants to be found." I stood. "Then I'll find who said that sentence to her first. Mercy takes its own. The next morning, the state troopers were late, which felt like a message of its own. I took the time to chart the names we'd matched, and the dates in the notes. Choir, clinic, home. I drew lines between donors and office holders, and found the same 3 names at the center of every circle. Mayor Harlan Creel, Pastor Orleans, and a man who always seemed to be in photographs without a title in Whitlock. I slid my finger under Whitlock's name and tapped it like I might draw blood. My phone vibrated. The caller ID said private. I answered. "I have something you want," a voice said. Female, late middle age, southern the way magnolia shade is southern. "Brenda's photo," I said. "Smart boy," she said. "Come to the old feed mill at noon. Alone." She gave an address that sat at the parish edge like a dog that slept outdoors too long. "If you bring anyone, the river takes it. How do I know you'll be there?" "You don't," she said, "but you'll come." She hung up. Naomi saw my face when I stepped into the hall. "You got something." "Meeting," I said. "You're not invited." She blinked once, then twice. "That's how we're playing it?" "It's how she said to play it." Was she the good witch or the bad one? "We'll find out." I paused. "Park 2 blocks away." "I thought you said." "I'm not stupid," I said. The feed mill had been dying slowly for 20 years. Corrugated tin peeled like burned skin. The grain silos sagged like old cheeks. Cats watched from shadowed windows, tails flicking like metronomes. Noon heat pressed my shirt down my back and made the air taste like pennies. She stepped out from behind a forklift that had turned into a planter for weeds. Gray hair cut blunt, lipstick like a strike. She wore a white blouse with pearl snaps and slacks that hovered between church and court. Her eyes were busy, and her mouth was mean in a way she'd learned, not been born into. "You, Eli," she said, "not a question. You're. You don't need my name," she said. "Not yet." "You took a piece of evidence," I said. She smiled a little. "You don't learn fast enough. You won't keep evidence long enough to matter." She reached into a folder and held up the Polaroid of Brenda the girl in yellow. A missing tooth, the date written like a birthday you wanted to forget. For a second, my throat closed like the air had hands. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want somebody to do right by those babies," she said, and her voice cracked in a way that made the hair on my arms lift. "But I also want you to know you got less time than you think. Sheriff ain't your friend. He belongs to men who belong to other men. And the ones who started this are old now, and old men like to prune in winter. You understand me?" "Not fully," I said. "How did you get the photo?" "I've been in and out of that office since before you knew which tie to wear for court," she said. "Folks see me, they don't look at my hands. That's the gift of being ordinary." "Who was Brenda?" I asked. She looked at the photo the way you look at the water where someone went under. "Brenda's mama used to clean this very office," she said. "Brenda liked to make boats out of staple boxes. She would float them in puddles after rain and tell me where they was headed. New York." "Chicago, Athens. Where's Athens?" I asked her. "I don't know," she said, "but it sounded like music." "She was part of the choir?" "She was the choir," the woman said. She and 4 others. They sang at rallies and fish fries, and once at a fundraiser where I saw a senator cry. People clap when they don't know what else to do. What happened to her? The woman looked at me, and what she said next felt like a shovel hitting something not rock. "She didn't die," she said. "Not then." "Then where?" "Long story, baby," she said. "Long and ugly. You want to start? You find Miss Luann Pike. She got herself a trailer out on River Road behind the RV park. She sell hot plates, and she drink cold beer, and she remembers things that ain't at all sociable. The choir director," I said. She nodded. "Sheriff's on his way," she added, casual as telling me I had something in my teeth. "He got ears everywhere. You should go." "You have anything else for me?" I asked. She lifted the Polaroid toward me and then pulled it back like a trick. No, she said. Hold your blinking. You'll get it back when you need it. She tucked it into her blouse like a second heartbeat and walked back into shadow, the cats parting like saints. I walked to my unit and met Naomi at the corner where the mill's fence turned to chain link. You really can't help yourself, she said. She told me to go, I said. Was she right? Yes. When we got to River Road, the sun was an iron smudge and heat rose off the asphalt in snakes. The RV park had a hand-lettered sign. Nitrogen monoxide fireworks. Nitrogen monoxide pets over 35 lbs. Nitrogen monoxide fun after 10. Behind it, the trailers squatted like old thoughts. We found Miss Luann's by the smell of frying catfish and the sound of a radio playing a gospel song that was one breath shorter than expected, like the singer had learned to live with less. Miss Luann was small and tight, hair dyed black as a crow's idea of night, lipstick the same shade as the woman at the mills, which made me think they shared more than makeup. She watched us come like a woman counting attendees at her own funeral. Closed, she said, even though she had a plate in her hand and the window was up. Ma'am, I said, I'd like to ask you about the summer choir of 78. Her eyelids fluttered like a moth hitting glass. She set the plate down. You ain't got the right to ruin my afternoon. I don't want to ruin it, I said. I want to know what happened to your kids. They ain't my kids, she said. That's the problem. Everybody wanted a piece of them. Nobody wanted to own what that meant. She studied my badge, then my face. You Baptist's boy? Yes, ma'am. Your daddy had good hands, she said. He stopped a fight outside the community center in '82 without lifting a finger. That takes a kind of witchcraft. She sighed. What you want to know? The short version or the slow one? The truth, I said. Whichever speed it comes. She opened the screen door and led us into a trailer that smelled like bleach and cornbread. On the wall, in a frame that had seen better, a picture of 5 children in matching shirts. Brenda in yellow, front row center, hands on her hips like a little mare. Luann stood behind them with a smile that had no idea it would have to carry so much. They sang, she said, and they were seen. That's the danger in a town like this. When black kids are seen too clearly, somebody decides to pick up scissors. Who? Naomi asked. Men in suits and men in collars, and women who wanted to be seen standing next to both, Luann said. They said opportunity. They said scholarships. They said up north, where the schools got libraries that smell like progress. They said adopt and adapt and everything will be brighter. And I asked. And some went, she said. And some didn't. And some made it, and some were made into something else. She rubbed her arm like the words made her skin itch. I tried to keep them. I tried to tell their mamas that not every open door leads to a living room. But I was 20, and they told me I was bitter because I couldn't have babies, and I sang too big for a small town. Brenda? Luann's mouth flattened. They told Brenda's mama she had a heart murmur and needed a special hospital. They told her the clinic could arrange it quicker. They said she'd be gone a week. Luann's voice thinned down. She never came back. Did you tell the police? Police told me to drink water and mind my choir, she said. Sheriff back then wasn't LeBleu, but he was the same kind of white. He smiled like a porch light and attracted all the bugs. She stared at me. You keep asking questions. You'll end up a story folks tell about a deputy who didn't know how to stay. You got someone? You got a mama? Don't make her bury another boy before she's ready. Who is Whitlock? I asked. She flinched like I'd flipped a switch under her chair. You find the lock under the church, she said. Then you find the key. She closed her eyes. I shouldn't have said that. The lock under the church? Naomi said slowly. There a basement? There's a storm shelter, Luann said, resigned. built in the 30s. Pastor Olands used to store tithes there during hurricane season. Said God trusted the low places. She smirked. That's the jest. Do you have a key? She laughed. Baby, I got a memory, and that's worth more than 10. You go to the fellowship hall, pull up the carpet in the corner by the big freezer. You'll find the hatch. If it sticks, say please. We drove back to St. Mercy with a feeling in my collarbones I used to get before a search warrant. The church parking lot was full of afternoon traffic, women shuttling pots, kids shoving each other with affection that could turn quick into something else. Inside, Miss Tasha glared at me and pointed at my shoes. You step on my clean floor with that mess. I will put you in the back with a mop. I'll mop, I said, and she blinked, then waved a hand like I'd ruined her anger. The fellowship hall was cooler than outside. The big freezer hummed like a drunk uncle. I knelt by the corner of the carpet and tugged. It came up with a sigh, revealing a square of wood with a ring, the kind of ring that had finger grease rubbed into it for generations. I pulled. It stuck. Please, I said. Naomi coughed a laugh. It came up. The ladder went down into a hole that smelled like iron and old paper. Light pooled along the sides like reluctant milk. I descended with a flashlight and a prayer I didn't know the words to. The storm shelter was not a room so much as a holding of breath. Shelves lined with jars and boxes, the walls chalked with watermarks. Against the far wall, a map of the parish with red pins in a scattershot pattern that made my throat tighten. On the table in the center, a ledger book thick as a phone book. And on the walls above the shelves, tacked in a precise grid, photographs, not the Polaroids from the box. These were printed on glossy paper, black and white, posed the way people pose when the person behind the lens has told them to be good. My light landed on a familiar face. Brenda, older by a year than the yellow dress photo, hair pulled back, smile caged. The caption beneath in handwriting neat enough to belong to a teacher. BRE number 06 cleared. Eli? Naomi's voice floated down, thinner in the cool. I'm good, I lied. I reached for the ledger and opened to the first page. The top read, Mercy Placement Register. The columns were kinder name, age, parent, guardian, date, placement, status, until you read the entries. Placed, private. Placed, out of state. Returned, unfit, cleared, medical. I flipped, the paper crisp with a life of its own. My light hit a name that pushed a swear out of me. Ozzie Rickman cleared. Medical at Street. Luke's. I knew St. Luke's. It had burned in 79, taking with it medical records, and one nurse the parish called a saint because they prefer their saints quiet. A sound above made me snap the book closed and go still. Footsteps in the fellowship hall. Slow, heavy. The freezer hummed on, oblivious. I thumbed my phone to silent and looked up. The hatch mouth was a square of darker dark. I lifted my light and clicked it off. Darkness sat on me like a coat you didn't ask to wear. The footsteps stopped at the edge. The ring scraped the wood, a sound like a blade being tested. Then it fell silent. I could hear my own pulse in my teeth. Naomi's breath, held just above, shivered like a held note. Then a voice I knew said, You find your way down into holes faster than you find your way out, Baptiste. Sheriff LeBleu. Calm, pleasant, the tone a man uses with a child holding sugar. I said nothing because I had nothing useful to say that wouldn't start a war one wasn't ready to finish in the dark. You tell Dr. Gaines she's got an autopsy in the morning, he continued. Found a floater up by the causeway. Business as usual. People drown in summer. His boots shifted. Wood creaked. The ring clinked again, and my fingers tightened on the ledger until my knuckles popped like small joints letting go. The ring settled back, and the footsteps retreated, slow as a man finishing a prayer he learned by habit. Naomi hissed a breath out when the door closed. Are we trapped? No, I said, not yet. I tucked the ledger under my shirt, cold against my stomach. We climbed fast and quiet, and when we pushed the hatch open, the hall smelled like onion and old fear. Miss Tasha stood at the other end, hands on her hips, chin up like a boxer who decided not to duck. You messed with my carpet, she said. I'll mop, I said again. You better, she said, but her eyes were softer than her mouth. And you better move that man out your way before he becomes part of the floor. We left with the ledger hidden beneath the devotionals, like a fox under laundry. On the steps, the evening had turned the sky into bruised fruit. Reverend Runnels waited, his apron now stained by something red. He looked like a man who'd learned what part of his house would burn first. He saw the look on my face and nodded. What did you find? He asked. An answer that makes 10 more questions, I said. And a ledger that says cleared, like it's a blessing. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't put that word in their mouths, but I left it there. Rev, Naomi said quietly, who is Whitlock? He opened his eyes, and the fixed calm in them soaked us both. Mercy takes its own, he said softly, like a man testing a phrase on his tongue for poison. That ain't a saying. That's a signature. Lightning stitched the horizon where the parish met the lake. The air tasted like coins again, and something like rain, but not rain. We stood on the steps with our ledger and our fear. Against all common sense, I felt the briefest spark of relief. Not because we were safe, nothing about our bodies in this parish guaranteed that, but because a door had opened. I had put my foot in it. I had the weight of a book against my ribs, telling me I had not imagined the pattern. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. Check your back pocket. I reached back. My fingers found paper. I didn't put any paper in my back pocket. I unfolded it and saw a photo no Polaroid camera had taken. A modern print, a snapshot of a woman walking into a grocery store with a boy. The boy had Brenda's missing tooth smile, 30 years too late. Underneath, in the same neat handwriting as the ledger, a single line, BRE number 06 returns. I felt the world tilt, not in the theatrical way. In the exact way a ship tilts when it takes on water, and the captain says he's got it, and the deck still lists. Naomi touched my elbow. Eli, she said. Part of me, I swallowed. Part of me hopes that means what I think. Part of me. I looked down the steps into the parking lot where the puddles held the church upside down. Part of me knows it means we're not hunting ghosts. We're hunting people who think they built heaven out of our children. Thunder laid a hand on our shoulders. Somewhere out beyond the last streetlight, a car idled. The ledger pressed its square truth against my ribs, and the words I didn't say tried to chew their way out. Behind us, the choir today's children started to practice. Their voices rose thin and brave, sure and new. For a second, I saw the grid of black and white faces on the storm shelter wall and the color of the present, layered over the past like a mercy nobody would admit. Then a scream tore through the fellowship hall. Shoes scuffed, metal slammed. Miss Tasha shouted a name that stabbed the night. We ran toward the sound, the ledger thudding, the church lights flickering as if the building itself had to decide whether to look away.
No, not today.
The scream carried through the fellowship hall like it had been waiting in the rafters all along. Naomi and I sprinted across the tile, the ledger banging my ribs like a drum, Myra's shoes slapping behind us. We burst into the kitchen. The freezer door stood wide open, humming its metallic hymn. Miss Tasha was pressed against the counter, hair half loosed, eyes wide. She gone, she said, voice shredded. Who? I asked. Kaisha, she whispered. The girl I had helping me. She was standing right here. Then the lights flickered. I turned, and she shook her head. gone. The freezer's hum became unbearable. I stepped closer. Inside wasn't food. The racks had been pulled, leaving a false back. The metal gleamed where new bolts didn't match the rust. I put my hand flat and pushed. The panel gave, sliding sideways with a squeal. Behind it, a crawl passage, air wet and rank, leading down. Naomi swore under her breath. A whole passage under a church kitchen. Mercy Parish, I said. Every good smell covers rot. We went in single file. The narrow corridor took us beneath the fellowship hall and farther still. The air thickened, tinged with bleach and mildew, with something sharper beneath. We came to a chamber lit by a single bare bulb. Kaisha was there, alive, bound to a chair. A man circled her. Thin, gray suit, hair combed sharp. His hands moved like he was still in surgery. Dr. Whitlock. "You found my ledger," he said without looking up. His voice was dry as paper. "You always do, eventually." "Step away from her," I ordered, hand on my sidearm. He turned calm. "You're too late, Deputy. The placements kept this parish alive. Do you think the church, the mayor, the sheriff built all this on tithes and crawfish boils? No. They built it on sacrifice. We gave children futures. Better than they would have had. You stole them," Naomi snapped. "You broke mothers in half and called it salvation." Whitlock tilted his head. "You speak like outrage matters. You're a journalist. Outrage is your coin. But in here, only order matters." Kaisha moaned through her gag. I steadied my gun. "Let her go, or order changes today." He chuckled, as if humoring a slow student. "You think killing me stops the river? I'm just the last man still rowing." Then Sheriff Leblou's voice came from the shadows. "Put the gun down, Baptiste." He stepped into the light, hat low, pistol steady. For a heartbeat, the air tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. "Sheriff," I said, "you in this too?" He smiled thin. "I was raised in it. My father kept the books before Orleans. My uncle ferried the children to Baton Rouge. You don't stop something your blood built." "You could," I said, "but you won't." He shrugged. "Some of us know better than to fight a tide." Naomi edged closer to Kaisha, quiet as ink spreading. Myra stayed behind me, steady, her eyes telling me she was ready for whatever came. "Give me the ledger, Baptiste," Leblou said. "We bury this and walk out whole." I took a slow step forward. Whole's a lie. These children deserve more than dirt. The choir above us struck up again, voices trembling through the floorboards, like angels learning how to sing. It was enough to shake something loose in me. I saw Reggie's grin on a porch, Mama's tea-steady hands, the children's Polaroid smiles lined like a roll call. "No," I said, "not today." I dropped the ledger onto the damp floor, but my boot pinned it. My gun never wavered. The moment fractured Naomi lunged, tearing Keisha's gag free. Myra swung a rusted pipe she'd picked up, catching Whitlock's arm with a crack. I fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Dust rained. Leblou flinched just enough. I closed the distance, knocking his gun wide. We struggled, boots skidding in damp moss. He was heavier, older but strong, his breath hot with rage. I slammed him against the wall, my forearm to his throat. "You think you'll win?" he rasped. "I don't need to win," I said. "I just need the truth louder than you." Behind me, Naomi's recorder light blinked red. She had caught everything. The sheriff saw it too. His eyes widened, the first crack in his armor. By the time the state troopers arrived, summoned by Myra's frantic call, the ledger, the photos, and Naomi's tape were waiting. Whitlock was cuffed, his thin wrists trembling but his smile gone. Sheriff Leblou sat silent, sweat slicking his hat brim. Outside, dawn broke over St. Mercy Parish, light gold as mercy itself. Children gathered on the church steps, their song carrying into morning. I stood with Mama later, watching Naomi's first article hit the wires. The names of the lost children scrolled across her phone like a prayer list finally spoken. You stirred ghosts, Mama said softly. I stirred truth, I said. Ghosts were already here. She squeezed my hand, then let them rest. We buried empty caskets that summer, names carved into stone, so no family had to whisper them again. Some children were never found. Some, shockingly, were alive under other names, other roofs, scattered across states. Naomi kept digging, and the world began to listen. As for me, I stayed in Mercy. Sheriff's badge passed to someone else. I worked cases with dirt under my nails, and the bayou still whispering. Some nights, I still hear Brenda's laughter carried in the choir's song, light and unbroken. Because the truth is this, mercy does take its own. But sometimes, with enough grit, enough love, and enough refusal to bow, we take them back. And that was the story no box could keep sealed. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop, where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore. The assumptions we let slide. The voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story. Not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see, or not see, decides what happens next. Like, comment, share. Not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks, and how truth finds daylight.